Welcome. My name is Rory McCaw, and I'm going to take you on a guided tour of Windows Server 2003. In this exercise, 4-2, we're going to look at automating the installation of DNS using the domain controller promotion process known as DC Promo. To launch this process and change a member server into a domain controller, we're going to click on Start, select Run, and at the Run command, type in DC Promo and click OK. From here, this will launch the DC Promo utility, or the Active Directory installation wizard, as we can see here on the screen, and we'll proceed through the next series of pages. We'll start by clicking Next, confirming the operating system compatibility, and reading through this dialog to make sure that we're okay with the fact that certain versions or older versions of Windows operating systems don't meet the new requirements, those being Windows 95 and Windows NT 4 Service Pack 3 or earlier. So we need to be at least at a Windows NT 4 SP4 level or higher. We'll click Next because that's not an issue here, and now we're going to select a domain controller for a new domain. So with that selection, we'll click Next, and we're going to select domain in a new forest, the other options being a child domain in an existing domain tree or a domain tree in an existing forest. Well, we're going to be establishing our Windows Server 2003 Active Directory like we would in maybe a small office type environment when we install or promote the first member server to be a domain controller and begin the establishment of the Active Directory. And in doing so, we'll see when we click Next and we again go through a few more screens that DNS, if it's not recognized as being installed, will be installed for us. So here I'll enter the name of the full DNS name for my new domain as corp.macaw.ca and click Next. We'll wait just a minute for this information to be verified. And as the wizard's doing its thing, we'll just stand by. There we go. It's determined that that's available. We can now see that the NetBIOS domain name will be corp, the first of the domain names used in the fully qualified domains. We'll click Next. We'll leave the defaults for the database and log files and click Next. We'll leave the default for the shared system volume and click Next. Again, any of these can be changed along the way. That's not really an issue in this case. I just want to get to the point where we see the DNS registration diagnostics page. And here, it looks as though what it's telling us is that it's recognized that DNS is not currently installed. So it tells us the wizard encountered an error while trying to determine if the DNS server with which this domain controller will register supports dynamic updates, and we can see that it looked to the primary DNS server tested at ns1.domainpeople.com because that was the registrar for, or the authoritative DNS server for macaw.ca, but the test failed. So we could select that I've corrected the problem and performed DNS diagnostic test again, but because I haven't, let's select to have it automatically installed by selecting the middle option, which is install and configure the DNS server service on this computer and set this computer to use this DNS server as its preferred DNS server. If we quickly just look down here in the properties of the local area connection, and if I open up the properties, select my TCP/IP protocol and go into properties, we can see that currently no DNS server is specified. So if we click Cancel and Close, and then click Next back on the DNS registration diagnostics page, we can continue on, set the permissions. We'll say permissions compatible with only Windows 2000 or Windows Server 2003. Click Next. We'll type in a password and confirm the password. Click Next again. And at the summary page, click Next. That is going to begin the installation of Active Directory, and at the same time configure DNS and the DNS server service to support Active Directory. So now you can see, as an additional option for installing the Active Directory on a computer running Windows Server 2003, if you are planning on establishing a Windows Server 2003 Active Directory domain infrastructure, then when you go about implementing the plan that you've created for your Active Directory domain, during the installation of the first domain controller, you have the ability to install and configure DNS at that time as opposed to doing that ahead of time. And we don't have to finish up the rest of the Active Directory installation to see that, but we can cut off the exercise now because we've really seen the key piece there, and that is that DNS and the installation and configuration of the DNS server service can be automated through the domain controller promotion process. So I hope you've learned something in this exercise 4-2, where we've seen how to automate the installation of DNS via DC Promo.